Hi, welcome back to another episode of Thinking Inside the Box on Noah's Ark. Today we're going to talk about an effect I call the synth organ sound, famously created by Pete Townshend of The Who. This iconic sound can be heard on Won't Get Fooled Again, featured on Who's Next, the album released in 1971. So let's first start by listening to the track.
We'll be fighting in the streets with our children at our feet. In the morrows to need worship will be gone. And the men who spurred us on, sit in judgment of all wrong. They decide and the shotgun sings the song.
So how did Pete Townshend come up with this sound in his home studio? Well, Townshend constantly experimented in his own demos, and it was a time where a lot of synthesizer sounds were appearing and popping up in a lot of commercial records in the 70s. And a few artists, including Pink Floyd, Todd Rundgren, John Paul Jones of Zeppelin, and Pete Townshend of The Who, acquired a synth called the EMS VCS3. And this synth can also be heard prominently on the instrumental track from Dark Side of the Moon called On the Run. So the VCS3 was equipped with a matrix to be able to interconnect the modules that were present internally in the synth. But most importantly, it had this external input where you could patch any kind of instrument or signal to modulate into the synth. So what he did is that he took the Lowrey organ sound and he patched that into the synth. And using the sample and hold module of the VCS3, he was able to chop up the sound into the sound that we know today on the record. Well, the sample and hold module works pretty much like an analog to digital converter, where it's going to take this analog continuous waveform and it's going to sample at certain points and hold the value until that specific period of time is done. Then it's going to sample again another value and hold that for that same amount of time. And that's going to create a discrete kind of chopped up stairway signal. And what Townshend did is that he took this stairway signal that could be, compared to an LFO's square wave, and he modulated the resonant filter or low pass filter of the synth to create that chopped up sound that you can hear on the track. The only difference is that an analog to digital converter doesn't have any value in between those sampled points. It's just those discrete points versus the sample and hold module is actually going to hold the value. So in between those samples, you're going to still have that same value kept. So now that we know how Townshend did it at home in his home studio, well, we're going to try to do that in the DAW and reproduce the same sound. So let's get started. I just opened up Pro Tools and we're going to try to replicate the Pete Townshend organ sound. So I've just opened up this demo of mine called The Water of Life, and I've got this dry organ part, and we're going to try to get as close as possible with stock plugins in Pro Tools. So this is what the dry organ sound sounds like. So basically it's just a continuous organ sound. So let's add a plugin to chop up the sound first. So here in the modulation category, we're going to have a stock plugin called the Vintage Filter. So let's add that. So let's first remove the resonance that gives it that kind of Moog filter that we don't really want. Let's put the cutoff frequency around 2K to have a little more definition. And then the trick is to set the LFO. So let's sync that to the BPM of the song. So currently it's at 76 BPM. Let's sync that. And then we're going to put that to 16th notes. And let's put the depth to 100% so that it chops up the sound. So it's getting closer, but I want it a little more chopped up, so I'm going to reduce the depth to minus 40%. So it's going to chop it up a little more, and that's already really close. But let's add another vintage filter so that we can emulate that long-term kind of modulation, which is an additional filter that usually Pete Townsend uses to modulate on a longer period of time. So this time, let's put the cutoff to 2K, and then we're going to put the rate to really slow frequency, so 0.22 hertz. And then we're going to put the depth to, let's say, around 40-50%. Let's put the curve, the low pass filter curve, to 12 dB per octave to get a little more of a gentle sound. So that's going to make it modulate over a couple of bars, beats, and give it a little more character. So there's another thing that Townsend does sometimes, is that he puts an auto pan that is going to put the organ sound on the left channel first and then the right channel and alternate between the two. So let's try to do that. So what we're going to need to do is down mix, so essentially merging the two channels into mono, so that we can use the AutoPan plugin, which is only mono to stereo. So let's put the down mixer. Now it's going to be mono, but now we can add the AutoPan plugin now. So in Soundfield, you're going to find AutoPan, but currently it's just a little slow. So let's link that to the tempo and put that to half a note, and the trigger to envelope, so that it's exactly at the right point of time, and that's going to alternate the signal from left to right channels. So this is pretty much as close as we can get in this short period of time with stock plugins, but I've got some other sounds I bounced previously with other plugins, and these are what they sound like, and I think they're much closer to the Townsend sound. So this is the sound without the auto pan, but with some reverb and delay. And this version is going to be without reverb delay, but with the auto pan. So that's closer to the Who Are You sound. And then we can have the same version with auto pan, but also with the ambience, so reverb and delay. So that's it, the Pete Townsend organ sound in Pro Tools with stock plugins. So that's it, guys. The Townsend organ sound, or whatever you want to call it. I hope you liked the video. And in case you missed some of my previous episode, I've created a playlist that you can click after a few seconds. It's going to appear on the lower corner of this video, and you'll be able to browse through my previous episodes where I describe other kinds of effects that you can bring from the analog world to the digital domain with the help of a DAW. And please don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.